Things are moving faster in cybersecurity as AI develops, and it's hard to find the right methodologies or best practices that can assist senior leadership teams plot a strategy to deal with these evolving risks. The core problem is that AI is changing the threat landscape faster than defenders can counter. So, what advice can strategic advisors provide CEOs and their teams? Where should they start? And how much of what they currently have in place for cyber resilience actually works? I'm Robert O'Brien, and I've been helping private and public sector organizations implement cyber defense for over 2 decades. To help me answer these questions and more, I'm joined by today's guest, Jane Frankland, MBE. Jane is a globally recognized cybersecurity and leadership expert, an author trusted by boards, governments, and organizations navigating complex risk. With almost 3 decades at the forefront of cyber, she built one of the world's first penetration testing firms, later served as managing director at Accenture, and helped shape major industry initiatives, including CREST and Cyber Essentials. Today, Jane is best known for reframing cyber resilience as a leadership and governance responsibility, not just a technical one. Hi, Jane. Thank you for chatting with me today.
It's so good to be here, Robbie. Yeah, I can't wait to dive into this discussion.
Does that bio cover who you are? Did I cover it well enough?
Yeah, I think so. The other aspect to my work is all of the work that I do with women. So I've done that for a good decade. So I've been in cyber for nearly 30 years this year. But I received my MBE for all of the work that I do for women in cyber.
That's fantastic. We'll talk about that a bit later. I'm interested, you're a published author. I believe you're also working on a new book. Tell us about the previous book and what can you tell us about this new book you're writing?
Yeah, the first book that I wrote is called Insecurity, and it's all about why a failure to attract and retain women in cyber is making us all less safe. So that was written 10 years ago, feels like ages ago. And yeah, it really was. It was before the Me Too movement. And I really tapped into something that was a little bit ahead of its time, but also like right on time. And it was looking at what we need to do in order to make ourselves more secure and really resilient. So, because that's what we're doing now. It's not about making it totally secure. It's about bouncing back fast, which is all to do with being cyber resilient. And my kind of argument was women enable us to do that because women see risk in a different way to men. So that was my first book. I wrote a second book, a tiny little book, really, which is more of a mentoring book. And again, it was an accident. So it really is called Insight. And I think it's 52 lessons to help you as a woman in cyber, because I thought I'd keep with the same theme. Anyone can read it, just like Insecurity, and lots of people have read it. But that was a tiny little book and just capturing things that I'd learned along the way. And it's been reviewed by some incredible women in the industry from all over the world, which makes me really excited about it. And it's helped lots of people, just like Insecurity has. And then this next book that I'm writing, and I've got to crack on with it, is to do with survivability. So I see it building on the work that I have done across all the decades that I've been in cyber. So it's just expanding that. And so I'm pretty excited about that because it comes from this premise of we can't be secure, but we can be resilient. And it is about being able to bounce back as fast as you can and as cheaply as you can and being set up for success. And what I feel right now is I feel that we're still trying to solve a problem which is not solvable. We cannot solve the problem of being secure. It's not possible. That genie is out of the box. But what we can do is we can change the problem that we're trying to secure. We can actually do a good job of being cyber resilient. That is totally possible. The thing that I see right now is so much money is changing hands companies and clients because they want to try and solve this problem of being secure and doing business more securely as opposed to being resilient. And I've been arguing this for many years. Our titles, what we're calling security leaders, like Chief Information Security Officers, is just a non-starter. So change begins in language. I firmly believe that. And we really need to be mindful of how we are operating as leaders and what is possible and what isn't. And this book it's not going to be a technical book. So the theme is cyber resilience for survivability, but it's really there to the planet, just like the first book, that the mission was to do that. So this book is really aimed at a readership of CEOs, boards, predominantly. So those who, maybe some other execs as well, some CIOs, some CTOs, some CFOs, but those who can really support the leaders out there. So there's up leveling that needs to go on, but this is not a book for the security industry on how to do a better job. I think they're doing a pretty good job. They can always be better. We can always be better. But really, it's about making sure that the situation and the truth, and some people will argue that the truth is subjective, and it isn't, but that truth actually gets through and they are making decisions based on the truth and based on the risk that they're facing, as opposed to someone else in the organization, in that chain, deprioritize the risk because they have a different agenda.
I love the fact that you've brought the two words survivability and resilience together, because for me, the concept behind it is that this idea that you can avoid a breach or avoid some future cyber problem is completely mistaken. And so therefore it's based on wishful thinking, right? It's that it'll never happen here,
Yeah,
which allows everybody who take that view to do two things. Number one, they can abdicate responsibility to a technical person. No, it's a technical problem, not my problem.
exactly.
Or they take the view, it's just too big for me. There's nothing I can do. All I need to do is tick the boxes, make sure that I have the things, the right firewalls, I've bought the right software, I've recruited the right team. What
And
could
I've
go
got
wrong?
insurance. And I've got insurance. Don't
And
forget,
I've
I've
got
got insurance.
insurance. So what more do you want me to do, right? And,
Completely.
and I think you're right in that it's that mindset where, for me, I think we're in a we've passed through the last 20 odd years where not a lot, an awful lot has changed. I go to InfoSec every year, and what's the current thing? Unified networks. What is it that is the current technological theme? And that's what you need this year to
Mhm.
fix your problems. Where in actual fact, I agree with you. The issue is, once you accept that this will happen, then it's got to do with how do you prepare for that, and how do you prepare for
Yeah.
the day after, which is fantastic advice to senior management, because an awful lot of it has to do with their own teams, right? Departments. What happens when they all go dark?
This is it. Look, it's a governance issue. The buck stops really with the board, doesn't it? If they're
Completely.
governing the organization, it's their responsibility. And what we have right now and have always had is the scapegoat. So the CISO, the Chief
Yeah.
Information Security Officer, is often referred to as the Chief Information Scapegoat Officer. And it's that accountability. Their name sits on the risk register, but they don't have control for the actions that need to be taken. So take fixes, vulnerabilities, flaws. That sits with IT. It doesn't sit with them. So they're having the job of finding an owner, a business owner, and making sure that risk is either transferred to them and they're not liable, because otherwise they are. Their name sits on the risk register. And there's personal accountability across the jurisdictions for this, which could result, at the very worst case, in jail time. So we need that to happen. And right now, they are the scapegoat. They're carrying that stress. They're carrying that accountability, which really is governance negligence. Because if they don't have the control to make the changes that they need to make in order to keep the company more secure, or ideally like cyber resilient, so that they can prove that they've done everything possible in order to ensure that a breach doesn't happen, or if it does, the impact is as low as possible, they're not liable. Their hands are tied right now. And that's the issue that I see. And it's either that the board, the CEO, other leaders there are unaware of that, or that they're quite happy actually just letting somebody else be the scapegoat. And in nearly all of the breaches that have made the headlines, so many of the breaches that have made the headlines, the big ones, so many of the CISOs have been sacked right after. So they've got through the crisis. They've worked
Yeah.
ridiculous hours, 18 to 20 hours. They've gone above and beyond, and so have their team. And that could be for a week, it could be for 6 weeks, it could be for getting on a year.
Yeah.
They're living in the office. And the thanks that they get is, okay, fine, somebody's head needs to roll. It was under your watch. It's you that's going to have to go. So their reputation is at stake. Their jobs are at stake for simply really an issue that needs to be solved higher up so that they get the support that they need.
I want to talk to you about that whole concept of the CISO not having control of, let's say, software development teams in light of the problems with the Mythos. But
Yeah.
before we do that, I think what you just said about the CISO scapegoat fingers up, that I've always found the minute a breach happens, it's a blame game.
Yeah.
It almost is
Yeah.
fixing the problem is secondary to who caused this thing, right? What I see
Mm.
changing in our industry, which I think will have huge ramifications for CEOs and C-level staff, is that governments recognize the risks. And I saw recently the UK government has gone to British industry and has asked them to sign a pledge. And the pledge is that they will request or insist
Oh,
um,
yes.
on cyber essentials for their supply chain. So that whole cyber hygiene thing comes in where I can't work with you unless you prove to me.
Yeah.
Now, it is still a blame game, right? It's a blame game pushing down on suppliers. But if you want to sell to Marks and Spencers or you want to sell to a government department, then you have to demonstrate. And
That's
suddenly
right.
it goes from a CEO doing some technical or a CISO doing something technical to the sales guys can't sell unless you can
That's
give them
right.
that bill of
Yeah.
lading.
It's like going back to my pen testing days. It's just, do you remember check?
Yes,
So you needed to be check certified in order to do any pen testing with the government. Then commercial organizations decided that they were going to adopt that too, because it was a way of differentiating between the pen testing
completely.
providers. And then there was a scrabble for, because I remember it was one of my nearest competitors, NGS Software. I get on really well with the guys there. I worked with them actually at one stage, but there was a scrabble. And I remember Dave Senior from NGS Software, he was two of the founders' father, they all worked together. He went and recruited pretty much all of the Czech team leaders. So they had no way of actually getting anyone through the certification because they had no one to do that because he'd employed them because they were working for government on low salaries and he could bring them over to commerce and pay them two or three times the amount. And that's actually how CREST was born. So we had a problem because no one could get Czech certified because Dave Senior had actually, and others, but it was predominantly him, and got 42 Czech team leaders working for his company. So he could say to other companies that this was how they differentiated themselves. So
You changed all the the
yeah,
gamekeepers and the poachers.
this is it. It's really interesting, all of this. And I don't believe that that is the way to go. And I know the UK government is really pushing cyber essentials, and it is good, and it really is
Good start.
helpful. Sorry?
It's a good start.
It's a really good start. It's the basics, and we need to do more of the basics. If we do more of the basics, then there's less chance of us as smaller businesses or micro businesses having issues, or even larger ones. Larger
Yeah.
ones, you really need other solutions. But it's a good start, the good foundational start. Here's the thing that I see is getting a pledge is just a waste of time. It's an absolute waste of time. The adoption of Cyber Essentials, because it's been out for really quite a long time. I want to say 14 years. I was there when it launched. I helped them launch it I helped CREST launched it and wrote all the guides and everything like that for companies doing it. The adoption has been so ridiculously small. For me, looking at that, if I was looking at that from a sales perspective, and that was my team out there selling, I would have fired the whole team.
Yes.
I'm really sorry, and I'm being absolutely blunt and frank. It's not a success story. They need to change the way that they are doing things. My view is they actually need a harder line. If the UK government wants UK PLC to be more cyber resilient, because that's what we're talking about, because
Indeed.
this can't be solved, then they have to do things in a different way. And I think they need to take a hardline approach. And I wrote this blog. I write all the time. I write blogs and newsletters all of the time. My latest one kind of builds on two of the others. The first in the kind of series is saying we're solving the wrong problem. We can't solve the problem of cybersecurity. It's cyber resilience. The second one kind of looks at cars. The first one looked
Yes.
at cars as a
Analogy.
market. Yeah, exactly. As a market that has solved driving. Being on the road, less deaths, crashes, etc., survivability better. There are other examples and things like that too. But with all of this, I really believe that just like cars, it's like you look at how cars are built, crumple zones, you look at seatbelts becoming law, you look at brakes. A lot of people will say, why do cars have brakes? It's to make them go faster. Yes, it is. But interestingly, that happened, but didn't reduce the safety aspect. The brakes, because you could go slower, didn't result in safer drivers. It meant that they could go faster. So they spent that safety dividend
Yes.
and took more risks.
Yeah.
So they drove faster around the corners, and the safety results didn't improve. There were just as many casualties, etc., from having the brakes, which I find really interesting, especially when you look at the whole behavior aspect and can you get people to do things based on behavior? Yes, you can, and yes, you can't. But then the other things that happened was that they brought in laws for seatbelts. You had to wear a seatbelt by law in the front. Then they brought them in for the back, in the back seats for the UK. Then they brought in car safety seats and improved all of the things. But with cars and road safety, your car has to have an MOT. You have to have a license to drive.
Yes.
So you have to have certain standards in place. One is you are competent enough to drive and you're healthy, because the health factors matter
Sure.
as well. You're short-sighted, you need glasses, or
Jeez.
all of those things factor in. Your car needs to go through an MOT so that it's roadworthy. If it's not, and that's basic, that's how I see something like Cyber Essentials. I see it as a car MOT. So my argument would be, if you want to trade, if we are really serious about making the UK the safest place to do business, and let's not go into innovation and how brilliant we are
Don't go
creatively.
there.
No,
Don't go there.
not for this one anyway. But if you're really serious about that, then I really think that should be mandated. I think you really should. All businesses, no matter the size, should have an equivalent cyber MOT so that the basics are covered.
They did this before. Do you probably about 20 years ago, the government this is before the ICO was set up in 2008. I think it was 2008, 2010. They had a thing called Code of Connection,
Oh, I don't know.
which Code of Connection was mainly, if my memory serves me correct, for the local authorities, and they needed to link into the DWP,
Right.
Department of Works and Pension System, to get information. And they said, okay, you got 2 years, and if you haven't reached Code of Connection, which was essentially ISO
Right.
27001, if you
Okay.
haven't got the certification, then you're not allowed to. So it was like they basically put a gun to their head and said, make this happen. But they had extended twice, 2 6 months extension, because the first time they thought, nah, I don't think you're serious about this. And then said, no, we're serious. We'll give you another 6 months extension. And to be fair, they all did get the equivalent of ISO 27001 prior to this. And I think it was all prior to the fact that the ICO was coming in a few years later. And it became a bit silly that government was fining itself and moving money around government departments, where really the objective is that they get a minimum certification,
Yeah.
and have some sort of institutionalized resilience in their DNA.
Interesting. I didn't know about that, but it's probably because I wasn't doing business with government or local authority. That's just my view on it. I think
But
there's
that whole idea of strengthening putting a bit of teeth behind the likes of Cyber Essentials, and indeed, again, if I'm right, Cyber Essentials is self-governed, where Cyber Essentials Plus has an outside
that's right.
assessor.
That's
So
right.
nearly you need Cyber Essentials Plus.
You do really. You do
Yeah,
really. There has to be a check. If we're really serious about this, and I would like to think that we are, and I know it's compliance, it would be compliance driven, but no one's going to make that unless they have to.
completely.
It's asking too much, because so many business owners believe it's not going to happen to me. It's not going to happen to me. It's going to happen to somebody else.
Yeah.
So the
Why would I
positivity.
invest money in this when nobody else is?
Exactly. I'm too small. I don't matter, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So that's a risk that they're taking. That's their prerogative. But unless they have to. So it's like with Cyber Essentials, a lot of the cases, it's like if you want to work with government, you've got to be Cyber Essentials certified.
Yes.
So they'll do that. And they'll do the cheapest certification possible, which is the self-certification, right?
Yeah.
Tick. I've done
Yes.
it. Tick. So for me, it's all a little bit ludicrous, this whole thing. And so much money changes hands, and there's a huge ecosystem there that is thriving and is making lots of money and employing lots of people. And a lot of it is on snake oil. But we could improve things if we just pushed certain things into what is happening now. And this book is really I've been inspired by Maslow's hierarchy of needs,
Yes.
but through a cyber lens. So really looking at the foundations, what we need to do in order to improve things. And just like Maslow had his 5 layers, or some people will say 6. I don't think there are any more, but there may be 7. I'm not sure. All I know is the 5 layers that he had, and how there was this obsession to focus on what breaks people. Just like we have an obsession in cyber around vulnerabilities and
Yeah.
threats and controls, as opposed to the operational capacity or capability that is required in order to make us more resilient. Like, for example, how do we make decisions? Who is in charge? Who is accountable? Do we
Yeah.
know them? And the detection tools by and large work. But what doesn't is, who do we contact? Who is the CISO? Who's in control? Who can make a decision quick? Who can kill the systems? So it's basics like that, as well as like how fast truth flows.
And for
You know,
me, I think, Jane, it's cyber first. It's putting security above all other considerations. And I think if you go back in history, where you're the government of a country, security was the most fundamental to
yeah,
protect your jewels,
safe
protect your government, protect your
foundation.
aristocracy, your king, and stuff
Yeah,
like that. Yeah. I
yeah,
mean, that's what they spent the majority of their money on, making sure that
yeah.
the barbarians wouldn't kick the door
So
down and wreck everything, which did happen because
yeah,
they let it go too the barbarians grew too strong, and the Romans, they for some reason lost their systems.
yeah,
And I think that mindset is the crucial mindset. And I wanted to
yeah,
talk about essentially what is a Pandora's box moment that we're facing, which
yeah,
is the whole mythos type system. And I hear people talking about the hardening of vulnerabilities
yeah,
like it's just an Apple update on your iPhone,
yeah.
and you just we just update and we'll be fine, right? And I wanted to tie that in with your recent blog that I
Mm,
read, a crash test problem and why
yeah.
safer software won't come through Goodwill, which I thought was a fantastic read.
Thank you.
And specifically in it, I wanted to talk about the find versus the fix gap. And I think that's going to lend a lens to what I think, and I agree with you, is one of the big problems. And rather than paraphrase, talk to me about the find versus the fix gap with the whole
Yeah.
AI thing that has arrived.
I think it's almost like going one step back and looking at where we are when it comes to the threat landscape. Like it's industrialized and democratized.
Yeah.
And if I return to one recent report by Verizon, their DBIR, their data breach investigations report, and what they're now finding after doing this for like about 19 years, which is absolutely fascinating. But they're now finding that exploiting vulnerabilities has now overtaken stolen credentials as the single most common way attackers get in. Now, to me, I find that absolutely fascinating. And because the pressure is on weaknesses in our software, that's already climbing before criminals get hold of any of the frontier grade tools. And suddenly when they do, then things get cheaper. It gets cheaper for them finding them. So for us, we still have this asymmetry going on, and it keeps so many people up at night. It doesn't keep me up at night. Very few things do. Where we've still got an attacker only needs to find one flaw, one vulnerability, and defenders have to fix all of them. But it really comes down to the finding flaws, finding vulnerabilities, bugs, et cetera, is cheap as chips because the tools already exist. But where we need to put the work in is really fixing them. And in order to do that requires the accountability aspect, which I referred to earlier,
Yeah.
to be resolved. Who is accountable for this? We know that CISO security leaders, their name sits on the risk register by and large. But when it comes to fixing these vulnerabilities, who is responsible? That has to be passed over to them. That has to be accepted by them, and they have to do the work. Because if they don't do the work and we flagged it from an accountability gap perspective, it's just not right. That if
Yeah.
it remains unfixed because of their agenda, we can't have it on ours with us as security leaders being liable, personally liable under laws. And having the stress of going to bed every night and knowing that's not being fixed. Or so for me, that's really what it's about. It's about improving the game of actually being accountable and fixing the flaws that are going to come through faster than ever.
So I think you're right. At the minute, everybody seems to be relying on the fact that the Chinese models allegedly are 6 months, 8 months behind the US models, but they will catch up with the functionality that's contained within Mythos and the other GPT type equivalents. But be that as it may, I think the problem lies that in a lot of cases, the solution is for the organization to upgrade a piece or pieces of software to the vendor's latest version, right? So I just need, here's a tool set that I use as part of my development suite. If you upgrade it to the latest version, then we're good at Mythos. I fixed all the problems in this latest version. But in organizations, even small organizations, to make those type of changes is just eye-wateringly
Yeah.
difficult.
Yeah,
Because it always has these knock-on effects. If we change this piece of software,
that might
it
break.
means we have to change that we have to upgrade the infrastructure. We have to go and change these browser settings. And the cost, I think, has not, I've heard no one talk about the cost of fixing all this stuff
Yeah.
because I think it's going to be the thing inevitably that stops people from dealing with it. Up until now, you have a CEO,
Mm.
someone comes along and says, we've got a amber risk, okay, and the cost to fix it is 17 million. I'll accept that. What's the chances that somebody
Exactly.
coming through, somebody would have to find this, do that, do this, those set of circumstances, yes, they might get in. I'll
But
accept
you
it.
know
17 million, yeah.
but you know what? That's easy to accept. One, if you are a professional CEO and it's not your company and you don't have
Yes.
shares, and
Yeah.
also if you're not legally responsible. So by that, I mean, you might go to jail. So
Completely.
so it becomes a very different kettle of fish if, hang on, it's your company that you've plowed all your investments into and you've built up and sacrificed this, that, and the other, family, friends,
Yes.
all of that.
Absolutely.
And by the way, you could go to jail if this actually happens. Because
Or it's a private equity firm that own this company,
yeah,
and if
exactly.
the private if the portfolio company is hacked, all that investment is gone and your investor's not going to be happy.
It's very different. That
Yeah.
thinking, that decision criteria is very different based on the context. Um, yeah, it's
I know. I think go back to the fix issue. I think you're absolutely right. Who makes that call? Who makes that
yeah,
risk acceptance or non-acceptance? And then I think for me the biggest thing is the budget. Where do you get the money to fix it? Because I
this
come across these risk like
mm,
accepted issues in my career, and the one thing that stopped them, even though they were in some companies dangerous problems, I could logically work through how, yeah, it takes all these circumstances to happen, but it's going to cost me this obscene amount of money to fix with no discernible benefit. I don't move the company forward. You say, we're going to be more secure. Yeah, but I don't get any more customers. I don't make any more profit. I don't innovate my product any further.
yeah.
It's like an insurance issue.
What's it giving you? It's giving you something, but does that outweigh the money that you're investing? It's ROI, isn't it? And it
Completely. But that's why I think the only way that you can address this is to go, we have to have cyber above all things. We have to protect the castle. We have to make sure that our defenses, because if these guys get over the wall,
but that's
everything's gone.
the thing is, that's elevating the importance of it. Now
Yes.
we hear that it's whatever in the top 10, top 3 in terms of CEO or board. We hear that, but we don't see that behavior,
Yeah.
do we?
No.
Because it's still like accountability sits with the CISO. It's not our responsibility, not our fault, that type of issue. And by the way, we'll get rid of the CISO if that happens because they're at fault. So again, scapegoat issue. So there's an untruth that is being distributed out there, which is, yeah, we take security seriously, but that's not what's
I totally
happening.
agree.
We don't see that.
And
We
I
see
think
we
your
see
concept
I tell you what we see, Robbie, we see performance. That's
yes.
what we are seeing, the
Theater, you mean?
illusion. It's an illusion. That song, isn't it? The '80s song or whatever. It's an absolute illusion
Yeah.
that cybersecurity solutions that can safeguard your business are in place that work.
I
We
think if you go at it from your point of survivability, that question has to be asked. If these set of circumstances happen, would we survive? And if the answer is remotely yes, then you have to, by right, fix it. And I think that's why there is such a huge overhaul of thinking
Yes.
that is required.
Yes, I completely agree. I really do think that it needs a revision of thinking. And it's interesting because with this book, I was speaking to one of my friends. She's a VP at one of the analyst companies. And I said to her, I said, "Oh, all of this is going on, which publisher to go with for all these different reasons and things like that." And then I said, and then I doubt myself. I doubt myself that I have
Yes.
the ability to write it. And she said, "You know what? You're the perfect person to write it." I gave all my reasons for like why it might not be the best person to write it, given my experience. And she said, "Based on your experience, you are the best person to write it because you will not take things for granted. So
Yes.
you will be investigative in your research, and it will be based on research as opposed to this is how to do it because I've done it before." And I like that. It gave me confidence to do it, to go, yeah, actually, you're right. It was a little bit like that with my first book, and I did approach it in a journalistic manner as a research project, research, getting the data, investigating it, checking my biases, and all things like that. And I think that's what needs to go on with it. It's like it's not taking things for granted. And this is where the diversity really of thinking of age, of gender, of experience, or all of the diversity kind of categories comes into place because we're so blindsided by the types of minds that we have in security who've done it before, who've come from here, who've come from there, but largely the same environments. And if there are people who have come from different environments, sometimes they're not senior enough to be heard. And then sometimes they're so old that their experience in their other fields is 30 years ago. So even though they have it, they're not on point, as much on point as they could be. And that's where you really need to look outside of cyber. So for me, looking at this issue through one of the blogs, the first one about when we're not able to solve the problem of cybersecurity, it's about
Yeah.
cyber resilience and looking at different industries and how they solved similar challenges. What is possible? We need to look outside. We need to bring in different thinkers and help them to help us to not be blindsided and to rethink what we are missing without bias, without an agenda. Oh, it's going to make me loads of money because actually I'm an investor, I'm a VC,
Yeah.
or I'm building this product and it does X, Y, and Z. We need that capability in order to tackle the issue that we have.
I think that takes it nicely to my area of expertise, which is the user employee piece. And I've always felt that it really is, it takes the village, it takes the whole village to secure the village, to change the attitude.
Mm.
It really is a team sport. And the problem with cyber is it's come from white coats and AS400s and
Yeah,
computer rooms. That's where it's come from, right?
techies.
And dial up modems. Where we are at the minute is that ordinary users, ordinary employees have more technology at home than they have in the workplace now. I like your analogies around car safety, and I think it is very pertinent in cyber safety at the moment. And I've always held that from a user perspective, personal certification. There used to be the European driving license for computers that was around about 20 years ago. I remember my mother taking it, being very proud, having a driving license for her computer. And that was because people were starting to use IT. What I'm interested in is the whole continuous learning aspect of
Yeah.
it. Because let's face it, the cybersecurity training you got 2 years ago is no longer valid in an AI world. Everything has changed, right?
Yeah.
Everything is changing. So we need to keep that employee training. But from my experience, the training for employees is something we do onto employees, where
Yeah.
I have seen in Denmark, it's the requirement of the employee to maintain their certifications, very similar to
Yeah.
the way it is in the health service, where
Yeah.
doctors and nurses
Yeah.
who
And
retain their certification have to
absolutely.
every
And
year go through
pilots,
that. Yeah,
commercial
pilots as
pilots
well.
and
Yeah.
the crew. Yeah, absolutely.
And I
Yeah.
think it also, we have to look at a computer as a weapon of mass destruction. People can do a lot of damage to the company and to their own private life if they don't take it seriously. And I wanted to ask you, does this idea of self-certification, people taking their cybersecurity certifications from one job to
Mm.
another, do you think that fits into your accountability and culture thesis within the blog that you mentioned?
Yeah, I do, and it kinda, like, builds on the kind of capability at the capability aspect. Certifications are a good thing when used appropriately,
Mm,
and in terms of or even it can be capability, it can also be culture, because it needs to be embedded security it needs to be embedded into the whole organization. It needs to it needs to start at the top. So the
yeah, it's
board,
culture.
they need to be on board. They need to be cyber literate and have an understanding of this. They can't just get a cyber person onto the board and, well, it's over to them. That's good because it can top up and their awareness. But it's again like outsourcing it, isn't it? Outsourcing that responsibility, that accountability. They've all got to be up to speed. And then
Yeah,
it's got to filter through out the whole organization, and it needs to be maintained and updated, and it needs to be relevant, and it needs to be specific to their job role. And then
right.
there needs to be tech helping the workforce to make the safe choice, the right choice, so it can prevent. No, you can't do that, or it can ask, "Are you sure you want to do that?" So there are several ways to do that. And then in between all of that, you've got controls in place to make sure that they can't do certain things. So it just adds to the safety,
Yeah.
the resilience of the organization. But you've got to have a culture whereby people feel safe. They don't feel tricked. Like there was in the news recently, there was an incident, I think it was over in Canada, whereby a healthcare organization sent emails round. It was a phishing simulation.
Yeah.
They didn't know. So it was a test. They sent an email around to say that they'd worked so hard, so they were getting an extra day holiday. And these workers were exhausted and they were like, oh, thanks a lot. It's so kind. And then obviously they found out that it was a trick, that they weren't going to get it. So then they felt really bad. Some might have felt a bit of shame, but also the predominant feeling was anger. You know,
Yes.
we're working our butts off and you've just done this to us and now we're not getting it. So there wasn't that recognition. And this has been done like so many other times before. I think in the UK, we had a train company that did it years and years ago. They were getting a pay rise, a bonus, or something like that. So it's a phishing simulation. So it's practices like that are useless. They really prove nothing at all. So we need to make sure that we have cultures where people feel safe to report things. It looks suspicious. They feel so that they're not feeling stupid for reporting something. And because that way, when people feel safe, you've got that psychological safety in place in your environment, we do better, not just from a security aspect, but from a performance full stop aspect. We're more innovative, we're more creative, we work harder because other things come along with psychological safety.
I have been involved with simulated phishing for a long time, and it's one of those things that people have very defined views on it. And the difference between someone who's had a breach prior to a breach, the types of simulation that they send out, and after they've had a breach, the types of simulation they send out is just transformed. It's just beyond, because what the first one is unthinking, tick the box.
Yeah.
The other one is preceded by loads of communication. We telling people we do simulated phishing.
Yeah.
We are going to try and trick you. We are going to be sneaky, and we have somebody over here. It's in my company, it was called Laura. Laura over here is going to come out with the sneakiest thing, and it became a competition. It became like, she's not catching me.
Yeah.
And if there was a simulated phishing at Meta Compliance, you could tell there was one. It was always the new people. Nobody, because Irish humor is based on cruelty, and so therefore we were always hoping that somebody would fall for it. And in particular, we tried to get the senior guys. They always try to get the senior guys because that was a big coup. So it depends. It is how you culturally pursue it. Because I agree with you. It's really easy to prove that people are stupid.
Well, it's not even, it's that they can be tricked. We can
Yes,
all
if
be
that's what
tricked.
you set out to, if that's what your objective is,
Yeah,
you'll achieve
exactly.
that. Yeah. So
Yeah.
I think it's one of those things that has got to do with how do you approach this, and are you trying to bring the whole group of people with you, so that, because it only takes one person to let somebody through your physical controls, to plug a Wi-Fi network into an air-gapped environment, that just people have been the social engineering gift that hackers have
All right.
wanted for Christmas for a long time.
I think we just have to work on the basis that everyone can be tricked. You
Yes.
know, it's the same thing as
If anybody thinks that they're above
they're
all this,
beyond that.
then they are.
It's like everyone, the
Yeah,
best security experts in the world, catch them at the wrong time, jet lag tired, nights
absolutely.
up with a baby, whatever it is, uh, drunk, whatever it is.
Hungover.
Yeah,
Let's not forget hungover
this is that
on
hungover.
Saturday morning.
You know, it's just that's totally achievable. Just like really anyone can get into your organization. It's like how many
Yeah.
social engineers, top ones, do you know that have studied the organization and they
Oh,
get in? It's just totally possible.
and that's
I mean,
before AI comes along, right?
but this is out. This is out. AI just, AI just shines a spotlight, as far as I'm concerned, on all the things, a bigger beam. These are all the things that you should have done. It just scales everything. And it scales the problem that we have not addressed, and that's because we haven't given two things. I think we haven't given it the importance which you raised earlier. So we haven't given it our focus and our attention. that elevation in terms is just not there. So why do we bother? We're on to the next thing. It's like profits or survivability. So I think that's the biggest issue for us. It's not been given the importance, the attention, the focus. So therefore we don't bother to try and solve the problem.
And what advice would you give organizational leaders? We're talking about AI. They were struggling before AI come along. Where should their focus be?
That is such a big question.
Yes.
It's I don't know where their focus should be because it depends where they are at with it because it is such a big domain. It's if you're speaking to a small organization that hasn't got a clue about security, it's
Yeah.
go and start reading or go and start listening to a podcast. There are so many good ones out there, obviously like this one. Go and get yourself up to speed if listeners are in the UK, the National Cybersecurity Centre has got loads of resources. There's so much available there. That's where I would start. But it really does depend on their level of maturity as to what you would advise. And you've got to, I think, also accept that AI is scaling everything. Some of the reports out there are really good. The Verizon DBIR is great. Microsoft's defense report is really good. Some of those reports out there, the bigger ones, are also another good place to start if you're a little bit more mature. And then it's a case of looking at your organization, talking to your CISO if you're
Yeah.
not a CISO and finding out what is the truth, what is going on.
I think it's the simple question: how badly do you want to survive a cyber breach?
Yeah, and also why?
Yeah, and
It's
then
like, why?
that everything leads from that. If you don't really want to care about it, it's a mute point.
But this is out the thing is in security, so many practitioners do care. That's why they stay. That's why they
Correct.
bust a gut. They really care about the mission. Yes, we have lots who are techies and to geek off and talk about technology and things like that. But all of them, the common kind of theme and thread is that people care. In this
Yeah, and they're
industry,
committed.
people really care and they're committed. Yeah.
Yeah.
And they want to do good. They want to do right. So that is a really good place to start. It's our it's it's our responsibility to ensure that happens and not to dismiss them or make their job harder. That's what I think.
Unfortunately, we've run out of time. So it just remains for me to thank Jane for this insightful and informative discussion. Jane, where can people catch up with you?
They can get me on my website, so jane-frankland.com or on LinkedIn.
Excellent.
So it's still the same name, just Jane Frankland.
Thanks for that, Jane. And thank you to our audience. I hope to see you again. Have a great day.
Thank you.